Alberta's iGaming market has been a key topic of discussion when it comes to iGaming in Canada, and now interest is growing further as Alberta's regulated iGaming space is set to launch this year. To understand what it takes to launch and operate legally within Alberta's iGaming space, we spoke with Manav Bhargava, lawyer and gaming law expert at Segav LLP. So without further ado, let's get the show rolling. And now, kind of moving into the topic of discussion, we're here to talk about Alberta's upcoming regulated iGaming space. Sega LP has done a great job in putting together some great documents that would help out a lot of people in understanding what the market is like and what the entry could be like. So beginning with just that idea, how does Alberta's new iGaming framework actually work? And what are the different roles of the provincial bodies that they've set up that would be working with the iGaming market?
Uh, Thank you for the question. So essentially, Alberta has followed the Ontario model, and now to get into what it essentially is. In Canada, generally, all gaming is illegal except if it is conducted and managed by the provincial government or a provincial government body that has delegated the job. So that is a very unique thing about Canada, and that is why the what iGaming operators or private iGaming operators get is a registration and not a license. It is a registration because there are two bodies. One is the AGLC, which is Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis, and then the other is Alberta iGaming Corporation. Now, to put it simply, AGLC is the regulator and the gatekeeper. You apply for a registration with it. It does your background check. It not only registers operators, it also registers key suppliers such as platform suppliers or game suppliers, and then it provides you a registration and ensures that you meet certain standards and requirements around certification of key gaming elements or key gaming software of your offering. The other body is the Alberta iGaming Corporation, which is the entity that conducts and manages the operation. You sort of work under the supervision once an operator goes live, once an iGaming operator begins to offer their services. They work more closely with Alberta iGaming Corporation. It is the money-making body of the government, and it is the body that supervises your operations on a daily basis to ensure that players are protected, and the operator conducts itself in a way that complies with its rules and regulations. So those are the two bodies that work together in this framework. It is very similar to the Ontario framework, where the AGC or Alcohol Gaming Corporation of Ontario and iGaming Ontario work together to sort of supervise the operations of private operators.
Yeah. And when the Ontario market launched, there wasn't as much information out there about how to kind of move into a regulated space. But now that Ontario is set up, are there any steps from your perspective that market entrants should know who want to move into Alberta? Maybe or would it be a similar framework to what they kind of worked on with the Ontario government?
So there are a couple of key differences, but it's largely similar. It's still the two government bodies, where one is the regulator, the other one is that sort of you enter into a commercial agreement with, and that sort of conducts and manages the whole iGaming services that are provided by private operators. So it's very similar. Some things, of course, are a bit different from Ontario. For example, the security and infrastructure requirements are a bit more strict in Alberta. For example, before an operator launches their service, they need a SOC 2 Type 1 certification. And after 2 years of the market going live, they would need a SOC 2 Type 2 or a ISO 27001 certification. So that is a bit different.
Yeah.
Then the other thing is that from the get-go, operators would need to integrate with Alberta's self-exclusion program. Ontario has just brought it or is going to be introducing that soon, but with Alberta, operators are going to be a part of that program from day one, and will have to ensure that, and that's not just, a, a policy matter that would actually take some engineering resources on the end of the operators.
And are there any other approvals or any steps one of that operators should have in mind, or should potentially work with maybe legal professionals to kind of crack that before the market launch?
So before the market launch, of course, you'll have. I was more focusing on what is the difference between Ontario and Alberta. But of course, the major steps involve first getting your registration, which would include your background checks. That is working with the due diligence team of AGLC, and then of course meeting all the technical requirements, ensuring that the games or the games that you're using are certified. The platform that you're using has the relevant, tools, including geo-blocking, RG tools, tools to be that enable you to produce on-demand reports. And so it would be there are essentially, 4 or 5 steps that are important. The first one is the registration. And this is where you decide your model, whether you're going to have one iGaming site or 2 iGaming sites, and apply for registration, as depending on your needs. Then the second, and after that initial registration is done, at the end of the registration, you'll have to enter into a commercial agreement with Alberta iGaming Corporation, which is sort of the other step. Then before launch, you have to ensure that all your games are certified. Before they are deployed, they need to be certified from an accredited testing lab. Right now, there are a lot of labs that are already registered in Ontario that are going to soon register in Alberta, and there are going to be new labs. So you should have a certification, or in this case, operators just need to ensure that their game providers or content providers have certification from a testing lab that is registered in Alberta with AGLC. The last would be to have a compliant operating model, to have your documented controls in place, to have your reporting system in place. That would be the last one. So if I had to bolt it down, it would be registration with AGLC, the contract with Alberta iGaming Corporation, and ensuring that you meet all the obligations under that contract, having the tech certified and a compliant operating model. Now you would need legal advice and services on sort of every stage of it. Let's say, while certification of tech doesn't seem something that an operator has to actively pursue, but what they have to ensure is that their vendor engagement policies and other controls in place are such that they can ensure, and they are documented, not only just implemented, they are documented in a way that that they can assure AGLC that they wouldn't be using any suppliers that are not registered, or deploying any games that are not certified.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting to know, because I think people would sometimes overlook these processes. It could just be people just go, oh, it might be a registration, but there's so many technical requirements to get into a regulated space. which is why it's so important to know these things. One of you mentioned something interesting a couple of minutes back, where you mentioned that how Ontario has its own kind of responsible gambling measures versus what Alberta has it. And in the conversation that I had with Minister Dale Nally, as well as what I've read in news, there's this really kind of heavy emphasis on having a regulated space that has clear protection and responsible gambling at its core. So, can you tell us what makes Alberta's maybe responsible gambling measures a little bit different than Ontario's, or what they're kind of doing in their own way?
So, one of the what I think that something that they are doing in their own way, or something that is a learning that something that they learned from what's going on in Ontario, is that RG and RG player protection, they're not just things to talk in policy. It's not enough for operators to just have a policy, and I think by the standards, but the standards, uh, the registrar standards that AGCO sort of came up with, it provided operators a lot of discretion to sort of how to comply with, and they were not very prescriptive. And they believe that operators are going to be able to understand that what is expected of them. And I think there was a bit of a gap between them, between what the regulator expected and what the operators thought that they were expected to do. And with Alberta, uh, Alberta has clarified that they would want operators to take a more proactive approach to RG, wherein it's not only giving them tools such as loss limits, time limits, but also ensuring and monitoring whether a player is sort of becoming addicted to the platform, or is facing gambling harms, and then intervening when necessary. That is sort of the stress. It's so Alberta doesn't just expect operators to have policies and tools, but also intervene if they believe that the player is not able to, or is not sort of using the tools to ensure that they're not facing gambling harms, or they are getting addicted uh, to their services.
Yeah, for sure. I would like to combine this question into two things, but uh we can't even fit it with the responsible gambling angle. But in like the first few days of operation, or even before launching into the space, what are some like concrete steps merchants should make? And are there areas, you just mentioned like the technical aspect of getting certain stuff checked with like a legal professional such as yourself, but so yeah, what are the first 60 to 90 days looking like for a merchant? What should they be prepared for? If there's a checklist, what would you be like, don't look over this, you need to check this, you need to check this? So kind of a big question, but would love to know your perspective on that.
So this the first 90 days would look very different for somebody who's already active in a regulated grade A jurisdiction such as the UK, or a state in the US, or Ontario. That operator probably has a lot of controls in place, and would just sort of need to modify or beef up their uh, con- controls and documented practices and policies and procedures for Alberta. For someone that is just new and entering the market, and was in the gray market before it would look a lot different. First of all, Alberta has clarified that as soon as the you launch in the regulated market, you should stop any activities in the unregulated market. And for an operator to do that, it's not just ensuring that you sort of stop offering in the market, but also ensuring that your suppliers are also not offering their services to the unregulated market. That is something that would have to ensure, and that would be ensured by having those contractual obligations in their agreements with their suppliers and affiliates. that assist them with marketing. So that is one thing. So let's say the first 15 days for a new for a new operator would involve identifying how they would structure their uh, how they would structure this entity that would be applying for the license, who would be the key people in that entity that would, you know, uh, be responsible for the entity, the board, the, let's say, the chief technology officer, the C level. Who would those be? Because they have an added obligation and they would need to go through a due diligence process with AGLC. They would start to work towards building and operating uh, a compliant operating model. They would have to, you know, decide whether they would have one website or two websites or two brands of a different brand for sportsbook or a different brand for casino. How would, you know, their services look? Depending on that, they would have to seek a registration. Two websites could and sometimes means having two different applications and paying the registration fee twice. So those are the questions that you have to answer. Then you have to essentially, uh, just quite like in Ontario, Alberta would require you to have a gap analysis, wherein you sort of look at the standards and requirements for the market and decide whether and compare it to your existing product and decide whether your existing product and your existing governance structures and policies and procedures, and decide and whether you meet those standards, and if you don't, then what is your plan to meet those standards
Mhm.
and requirements. So that's the other thing. You would then look at, after doing that exercise, you would look at at your policies and procedures and beef them up as needed, modify them to suit the need of the market. Um, and then, you know, once you've done this, you would move towards registration, have your people, have your team have all the documents that you would need ready for registration, have your team be ready for background checks, not just for your company, but also for key people. Ensure that your vendors and suppliers are ready and already registered. Let's say if one of your key suppliers isn't registered, then you would have to ensure that while you are registering with AGLC, at the same time they also begin their registration process. It would be, you know, very disappointing for operator to find out that one of their key suppliers is not registered for the market and won't be able to support them in this new market. The other would be to uh, ensuring again your testing and your lab certifications and security testing done. Uh, then ensure that, you know, that you have all the product controls, geofencing for Alberta, RG tools, player protection, to player protection tools, ensuring that you have your AML and KYC tools in place. So all of those. After that, uh, you know, once the last sort of 45 days would be ensuring that uh, that all that your control activity matrix, which is an important document uh, that is very similar to Ontario, is sort of being audited, which ensures that all your controls are in place and you're ready to go live. And then finally going live, ensuring that once you go live, you have all you have all your people on the same page. You do your testing, that you can actually produce reports as needed. Uh, you can comply with all your obligations under the agreement with AIGC and all your and their other policies and procedures related to AML and KYC. So that is, I think the last 30 days or 45 days is really just testing how robust your product is and ensuring that it complies with everything that you need to comply once you go live. Because, you know, once you go live, any issues could lead to non-compliances and invite sanctions, if not maybe uh, the first time, but if there is you don't want the regulator to think that you sort of have you do not have enough checks and balances in place to run a compliant offering. Uh, and not it's not only about sanctions; it's sort of losing trust with your players and the regulator.
Yeah. I mean, based off of how much you've just mentioned, that 90 days seems like a lot. So my question, my follow would be, how important is collaboration during this process? Because to have you must be a little bit, I think a merchant would be at ease that hey, we have someone who can, kind of support us during the first 90 days and prior even to the 90 days. I'm sure it's not just the first 90 days, but it's the maybe 6 months long process that you're already working on the back end. But how important is collaboration between you, affiliates, merchants, and regulators within the province?
So exactly. So we as a firm were involved with AGLC and giving a feedback on what when this regime was being built. So we sort of already recognized and provided our feedback on issues that could impede the growth of the market. So collaboration is very important. It is really important that when we say this a lot to our to operators that do not have experience in grade one jurisdiction, that if sort of you use us, it could add to some of your compliance costs, but it would certainly be more expensive and more time consuming if you try to figure out everything yourself. And that's very important that you collaborate with the right people and have your supplies. So especially for operators that were in the unregulated market, and sort of those operators work with suppliers and marketing affiliates that sort of are only used to working in the unregulated market. An operator moving to this needs to understand it's not just a transition. It's actually a switch off and then very carefully a switch on into a new regime. So as I said, like for example, the standards require operators to not work with any suppliers and affiliates that are sort of still servicing the unregulated market through other clients that they may have. It's very important to have those contractual obligations in place that sort of allow you to exit relationships with them if such a thing happens. And it's better to actually prepare beforehand. So yeah, so the collaboration, as you said, is not just about the first 90 days of launch. It's probably 90 days or even about 8 to 10 months before your launch.
Right. And sorry, just breaking the butt. I was just about to ask you, what do people overlook? But there's the answer yourself. Like it's just collaboration between people who know the market or are experts within the Canadian market and can help easily guide you in kind of tackling these kind of complicated processes would be the best way, right? Right? That's the best way to say
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And as I said, it depends on your team and how experienced they are. Canada is its own, different kind of jurisdiction. It has its the Ontario iGaming regime and Alberta iGaming regime have a lot of similarities, but are a bit unique in their own ways. In especially the controls and procedures and policies that you have to have in place. Of course, as I was saying, it as opposed to other jurisdictions where what you get is a license. There is a reason for why it is called a registration, because the two bodies, AGCO and Alberta iGaming, have supervised you more than another regulator in another jurisdiction would be involved. They're more involved because of their mandate of to conduct and manage the operations. So you could think that a private operator sort of works as a sub-licensee, if I may say it, for Alberta iGaming and in Ontario for iGaming Ontario. So that's the way. That is why, in Ontario, the taxes are paid by iGaming Ontario on behalf of. So the HST is paid by iGaming Ontario, because that it is the one that sort of is offering these services. And while the operators are they're offering these services under the supervision of iGaming Ontario.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. That's actually really helpful to understand as well. That was a really good point. My last question for you, Mana, would be that now, because last year there was some chat about Alberta's iGaming space, but now this year it seems like something will definitely happen, right? So with this market launch coming up, do you expect more markets to open up within Canada soon? How optimistic are you that work is not going to be short for you in the next few years as more kind of markets open up? Do you see any sort of effect, like some ripple effect after Ontario? It's Alberta. After Alberta, do you think it's going to be something else? It sounds so silly when I say that, because like Alberta's not ready yet, but I'm like, what's next? Yeah.
I think they're seeing the success of the Ontario market. Ontario has one of the biggest markets in North America now, or I believe it is the biggest market in North America. And seeing that success, and Alberta, following sort of the Ontario model, with sort of is a great model that has on one side sort of promotes growth, and on the other side has all the checks and balances for player protection that did not exist with the unregulated or the gray market space. So I think we would see other provinces following, maybe adopting a similar model or a different model that works for them. And of course, with keeping in mind the conduct and manage mandate. But we could see other provinces. It would be interesting to see it. Right now it would be, naming a province would just be speculation.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe one or two of the bigger provinces, in terms of size of the population, may follow suit.
Oh, there you go. You have it. Munam, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. As I mentioned, that this topic has been spoken about for like 2-3 years, but I'm so happy that we could have it in this format. And for anyone who is moving into the Canadian space or wants to better understand the Canadian space when it comes to regulated iGaming, this would serve as the content piece that they could take everything from. And you are such a wonderful expert who really helped us understand how the intricacies work and what is kind of involved and what people shouldn't overlook when it comes to iGaming in Canada. So I want to thank you so much. I know it must be a super busy time for you and your team. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today. And truly, it was so wonderful to learn from you.
No, it was great talking to you, Rad. Thank you for reaching out. And I'm really glad that I could contribute and help anybody who's looking to enter the market. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank Mana Bhargava, lawyer and gaming law expert at Segav LLP, for joining us today and providing his expertise on Alberta's upcoming regulated iGaming market. If you have any questions for us or Mana, please do comment down below. Don't forget to like and share this episode and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning into the iGaming show presented by Paramount Commerce. I'm your host, Varad Mehta, and until next time, keep gaming.